Welcome back to Wilderness Attitude Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Waddell. We're jumping right back into part 2 with Ben Knapp. Hopefully you guys listened to part 1, but if you didn't, it's okay. We saved it for you. You can go back and listen to it. It's on the website, iTunes, Podbean, wherever you want to go. He's a pilot out of Anchorage, Alaska. Been flying since he's 16 years old. Has the best job in the world, in my opinion. And we're going to jump right into this Dall Sheep hunt story and adventure that he shared with us. It's kick-ass. Then we're going to phase into a little bit about what it takes to hunt Alaska. And I think this is good information. I think that if this podcast hasn't given you the itch to maybe get a chance to go to Alaska and jump on an air taxi service and get backcountry and go check out what Ben has been living his whole life, I'm sure you're grasping it out of this deal, but he doesn't take any of it for granted that this is what he does every day. He's a serious pilot. He's a serious photographer. He's a serious hunter. He's a serious man about Alaska, right? I mean, it's his life. He lives and breathes it. So here's part 2, Ben Knapp. Thanks for tuning in. So, I mean, knowing that I'm just so jealous that you can get in a plane and you can fly to where you're going to hunt. Like, so let's take, for instance, your Dall Sheep this year. Mm-hmm. You and your buddy, I don't know if he's your friend or your foe. We'll just call him Nick for better sake, but because maybe he's not your friend because I think he got a bigger sheep than you.
This year we were actually just about tied. I think mine was a year older, but they were similar in length there. But so Nick and I have been buddies for a long time, and the first time we went out sheep hunting together, we flipped a coin, and I won the coin flip, and so I got the first shot, and it turned out to be a really close shot, and you know, so I got one, but just kind of before both of us got together for this hunt, like he had some experience sheep hunting and, you know, kind of had his own difficulties. I had been out driving out and hiking. I had flown myself out like in high school, and we all had our stories and always like, oh, I saw this sheep here. We never pulled it all together. And so, yeah, we went on this trip. We each took an airplane. I took, my dad and I are partners in our 172. He had a PA-12, both different kinds of airplanes. But yeah, so we get into the field and we spot sheep. There's a legal ram, and you know, we get close and okay, we're sure it's legal, and now we're trying to approach it. I think there was like 30 ewes up in the same group, and so a sheep, they always lay down facing different directions, and so that's a lot of sets of eyes looking everywhere. And when there's a group that big, it's really hard to get close to them. And so you know, I'm contemplating this like 450 maybe 500 yard shot across the valley, which it's windy in the middle of the valley, and you know, I know I'm going to hit it, but like an ethical shot is real big for me. And so it's like, I don't want to chance this. And so we end up going down across the valley, hike up the ridge. And when we finally kind of peeked our head over about where the sheep should have been, it's 45 yards away from us. I should have had my bow with me. And it just, you know, it all worked out. You know, we dropped him, and all the ewes were, you know, a couple hundred yards up the hill, just watching us the whole time. Whole time we're there, field dressing them out, they're just watching us. Like, man, they must not have liked him or something. Like, they're just, completely, okay, take him away. Yeah. But that was our first time sheep hunting together. And a couple years after that, I was just way too busy with work. Like, we always like, okay, we're going sheep hunting. Okay, August 10th, season opener. And I'd have it marked on the calendar, and it gets up close to it, and we just get way too busy at work. And there's so many flights in the books and not enough pilots, and I kind of got guilt tripped into still working throughout. And so a couple years not sheep hunting there, and this year I was really going to stick to my guns. So I marked it on the calendar. You know, Ben's gone. It gets up near it. Flights are starting to stack up. I'm like, well, you guys are in trouble. You're gonna have to hire another air taxi to take over some of the load because I'm not here. And
because I'm out.
The guys were trying, but I just went for it. And so we got a similar spot that we had been to in the past, but there was another airplane parked on it. And that's kind of always a thing kind of among pilots and people that are flying themselves out to go hunting. a guy that's getting dropped off, you'll fly in. That's the spot you're going. And if there's another camp there, well, you're scheduled to get dropped off to that spot. You don't really have enough fuel to go scouting around and finding a new one. But for us, so that person would get dropped off there. But so for us, we see this camp, see an airplane, and we're like, oh man, like we don't want to land on top of this guy, because if we were camped there, we wouldn't want someone landing at our tent. So we ended up going down the valley a little bit farther, found another strip. We landed there and set up camp, and kind of thinking of, okay, well, now we got more hiking to do and might bump into this guy up there. But another thing, like you can't use an airplane to scout for sheep, or at least during the hunting season. So we had flown through the area early season. We kind of knew where the sheep would be, but it's been a couple weeks. So anyways, we land at the strip. Walk up valley a ways. We bump into the guy that had the camp. Kind of, we're trying to talk to him. Like, hey, where are you going? What's your plan? We want to avoid you. We'll go up a different drainage.
That's polite. That's polite hunting ethics, right?
Yeah. And so he was real nice about it. And so he's going to go around this way. We're going to go up the drainage that we had planned, and everything worked out. And we saw a couple smaller sheep up the first spot, but we spent 2 days up there and just never really came up with anything. Saw a couple that were, close to full curl, but so they're really strict here. It has to be a complete full curl of the horn, and the tip has to come up like through the eye socket if you're looking at it from the side. So it makes a full circle, if that makes sense. So you can't afford to shoot one that's under, because they could not let you go sheep hunting for the next couple of years. So you're really careful about it. But anyways, we go back down to the airplane, and we're talking about what we're going to do the next day. And Nick gets up really early. He's airline pilot, used to getting up at like 4 a.m, and I like to sleep. So, about 7:30, it's just starting to get light. Wakes me up, and he's like, hey, so I got some good news and some bad news. And okay, good news first, get me out of bed. Let's go. He's like, so I think I found your ram. And he'd been glassing for, an hour or so that morning since it got light. I'm like, okay. So I get all excited. I'm throwing shit in my bag, and we're going to go after it. And then I'm like, but whoa, what's the bad news? He's like, it's a long, long ways away. And I'm like, oh, and it wasn't terrible. Like by sheep hunting standards, if it's inside of 10 miles, it's not that bad. And this was only about 5 miles away. But we had to hike about 4 miles to get to where we could really see the sheep and get a scope on it. Right. Yeah. It's all by himself, and it's up in this really rugged terrain. So we figured, it must be a ram, or a good ram, decent size, because the smaller ones will hang out in groups. And we're both kind of, after we determined it's legal, and we just walked across this gravel bar that wasn't that bad to get there. So we're not hurting yet. And I remember last year or a couple years ago, there's a big river between us and that mountain. And, okay, we got him in the scope. Yeah, he's definitely full curl or past. He's a good one. We're going to go after him. Right. And we're both just kind of hanging out. We're waiting. And then I brought up, like, hey, Nick, isn't there I'm saying river. And he's like, oh yeah. There's a river over there. And it's like, well, how deep is it? Have you ever crossed it? He's like, well, it's not really like if we're going to cross it or not. It's just going to be like it's going to suck a little bit, or it's going to suck a lot. And it's still early morning, and the waters in the rivers, they vary in depth a lot throughout the day up here, because they're all glacier fed. We cross it, and we were holding hands going across so that we wouldn't fall in. It was raging pretty good.
Now, when you crossed, do you stay dressed, or do you get down to your underwear and put your Crocs on to cross?
Yeah. So we actually had these new waders that we are new to us. They're Wiggies, like the sleeping bag company. They make them, and they're just really thin. They weigh 10 ounces for the pair, and so we're trying them out. Wow. Even if we calculated, because they're like $75 a pair. Not cheap, but not real expensive. We're like, okay, so if we cross the river like 6 times, we're calculating like how much each crossing cost us for having these things, and anyways, we crossed, and okay, we're crossed it, got that out of the way. Have to bushwhack a little bit up through the alders, and we were trying to. The hardest part with sheep is climbing the mountain in a spot that the sheep's not going to see you. They're really smart in that they'll get on these little perches where they have almost 180 degrees of view. They can see all down below them, and they can just sleep all day, and they'll walk over here and get grass. Sheep are kind of unique in that, or Dall sheep, I don't know about others, but they don't have to go to a water source. They don't have to go to a creek and drink. They're able to extract moisture from the plants they eat, which, they're pretty dry plants up there. But so you can't really wait next to a creek expecting them to come to you. So we had to go about half a mile out of our way, get up the mountain. A lot of alders, a lot of bushwhacking. It's not fun.
Right.
We got into the clear, and now we're walking on shale, which shale is really loud, but also every step you take, you slide back down the hill about a half a step. So it's not really hard work, but it's just demoralizing because, it's only 4,000 feet we're going up, but I just climbed 6,000 feet. And
right.
So we're trying to do it quietly and trying to, just get up to them. We got up above the sheep and then just started side hilling over to them. And by the time we could see him, we were inside of 100 yards, and he was a wary old ram. So he might have heard us whisper or something like, I see him. And he just stood up and looked at us broadside. And I'm like, oh, well, here we go. So much for getting the GoPro out. You don't have much time. Right. He's going to be gone. And so I got a shot off and, tipped him over. And he didn't roll very far. It's real steep, but just the way he landed, he only went I think 2 or 3 rolls down the hill. We were jumping up and down, another ram down. It's we're not going for the monster, humongous ram. Just if it's a full curl, that's good enough for us. Finding a full curl sheep. Yeah. Yeah. And it was real pretty one, past full curl on both sides and flared out and everything. And so we were stoked, but the whole time you're field dressing it, you're thinking about that river crossing. And so it was right at the top of our waders, and we almost, fell in the water crossing it. And now it's 4 or 5 hours later, and we're like, okay, what's that river doing? So we load up the sheep, get down the mountain, and luckily the shale's actually really nice on the way down. And so, what we fought through on the way up, on the way down, it makes it real easy on your knees. Each step, now we're sliding an additional step. And so the way down was just unbelievable. It just went real quick. Now we're at the bottom. And between the two of us, since we each have backpacks, my pack was probably 80 pounds. His was about 60 because I have the horns, a little bit extra weight. Get up to the river, and it got probably about 8 inches, 9 inches deeper by the time we go to cross it, and the speed picked up. We both went over our waders, and we almost tipped over in the water, but it was one of those we're getting back to the airplane because we have a bottle of whiskey back at the airplane. We're going to carry it over here. And so, made it across, got soaking wet, but, that's all part of it. And so,
part of the journey.
And so now we have one sheep down, and it's only a couple days into the season. And so I had 5 days off from work, and, my legs are about done after, total at this point, we're probably got 20 miles on the boots. And it's like, all right, we got to get Nick a sheep, or we at least got to try for one. And we're looking up all these other drainages, and we actually hiked up the next day. We spent all day hiking around. We found a carcass. So someone else had been there first, and we're like, all right, well, we had the right mindset. We were in the right area.
Right.
And we kind of came back.
How far would sheep move after one of them's taken in that drainage?
It's really bizarre how they move. So when you take one out of a particular group, a lot of times that group of rams will just sit there and watch you the whole time you're field dressing it. It'll just watch you. But if they see you and you weren't in position to shoot, or one wasn't legal or whatever, they'll just start moving. And so the one that kind of goes into that, the one that we found for Nick, there was one spot that it's from where we were when we got mine. We could kind of see around the corner and across this glacier, and we see a couple white dots out there. We couldn't really tell if they're rams or not. And so that's where we ended up after a couple days of trying elsewhere. That's where we're going for his. And now my legs are really done, and I'm sure Nick's are as well, but he just wasn't showing it. But we hike over right before the glacier. At the bottom of it, there's a lake, and we see a tent on the edge of the lake. So now we've hiked another 4 or 5 miles from camp. We get to the shore of the lake. There's another tent. And so we know they've seen these sheep. We bumped into the guys. They were getting water. And, we're talking to them. We're like, hey, we know you've seen these sheep. You were here first. Are you interested? Are you going after them? And I guess they had hiked over to them, and they decided, it was really hard to cross the glacier and the ravine to get over to the base of them, and they weren't really sure if it was legal or not, the one big one. And so, like, well, if you're not going after them, we already hiked all the way here. We're going to go after them. And
right.
So we're already 4 or 5 miles from the plane, hike around the lake, across the glacier, and we had to cross the glacier, a little mini one. So now we're 2 glaciers in. 2 rivers, and then we hiked up this like waterfall. Basically, water's falling down it. We're climbing up, just getting drenched because that's the only spot that the sheep wouldn't see us to go up. And
Right.
stuff that
That's
badass,
normal, dude. That's badass. You're climbing a waterfall to go get a sheep, man.
Stuff that like sensible people would have rock climbing gear and have belaying systems and all that. And that's what crazy sheep hunters do. They just go without it.
Right.
So we spend hours. We get up to where the sheep should be. We should just peek over this ridge. We had this whole stalk all planned out. We're just gonna inch over the tundra here, really quiet. So we left our backpacks like another 1,000 feet below us. We're going quiet. Get up to this ridge. We peek over the edge. They're not there, and so we duck back down because we think maybe they came closer, because we haven't seen them in about an hour. So we're looking around, and we're trying to not talk and trying to make every movement real slow. Peek over again, and Nick just like out loud just F-bomb, and so that means they're far away if he's going to talk. And so I'm looking around, and they're about a mile away, about 2,000 feet above us, and just booking it. And so one of them either winded us or it saw us a little bit, just like the edge of a backpack or something. And if one of them sees you, it'll get up and start moving, and the rest of them follow suit. And so there was a group of about 8 of them in this group, and so they went uphill about 2,000 feet. They're a mile away, walking around this other mountain bowl. And general rule of thumb, like once a sheep sees you or winds you, you don't chase them. They're gone. They're built for this terrain. They a wolf can't catch them. Yeah. We're not going to catch them. But this is kind of our last day that we're going to be here, unless we really saw something else. And so we've kind of exhausted all our other options, the other drainages that were within reason from camp. And I can just see it in Nick's eyes, like he's going to go after the ram. And I'm like, God, I don't want to do this. And so we're watching these sheep, and they kind of split, and this big group of them kind of keeps on their same path, and they go up over the ridge. We know they're long gone. This other one is just kind of lagging behind. It's walking a little slower, and it splits and goes kind of the other direction, still side hilling, but now the rest of them are going right. This one went left. And we're like, that must be the old ram. He's like, let the kids run over here. I'm tired. I'm going this way. And we're glassing him, and all we brought was our binos, spotting scopes down in our backpack down below. We think it's the big ram. So we decide we're going to go after it just to see. We're going to peek over the ridge. If it's not right there, we'll go back to camp. But our backpacks are 1,000 feet below us, and so now we have to go all the way back down, like some really gnarly stuff, get our backpacks, come back up. And this is stuff where, like, I'm not scared of heights, but you kind of you'll stop from here and there, and you kind of have this, like, moment with yourself where if I slide like 2 feet, I go down into some stuff that I'm really going to lose my footing, and I'm going to go down like 1,500 feet, and there's cliffs and stuff, and you kind of second guess your decision to go this route. But had a couple of those where like Nick would round the corner and he'd peek back and see me just kind of holding still, and there's nothing he can do to help me, so he just like go back out of sight. And we talked about it later. He's like, yeah, I knew I had to give you a moment. Like, there's nothing I could do.
Right.
And likewise, I'd climb something, and where's Nick? I'd look back, and he's just like, he's slid a little bit, so he's just kind of thinking about it a little bit, what his options are. But so now we have our backpacks. We're back up 1,000 feet to where we could see them. They're out of sight, and so generally when they're out of sight, little rock noises sliding around, it's not going to make a huge difference to where the sheep can hear
rocks slide and fall all the time. Yeah, right.
Exactly. And so we start trucking over there, going up this hill, and my legs are about done. They were done before we started that morning, but after you power through it a little bit, we were eating Advil like candy, and we're just going for it. And so you can keep moving, but I get about 500 feet from the top, and I'm out of gas. And so take my backpack off. I start eating candy bars, like trying to, get this second wind. Nick keeps going. And right when he goes out of sight, like I just kind of sit back down, like, okay, he's not watching me. I'm going to take a break. I'm going to sit down next to my backpack for a while. And I hear a gunshot, like right away. I'm like, what? Look up, and I see the sheep tip over, and it rolls down the hill right to the same elevation that I'm at. And so I'm just thinking, like, this worked out perfect. And I'm telling Nick, like, well, you didn't have to roll the sheep down to me. Like, I would have hiked up there and helped you out. But it just happened to fall that way.
I was just refueling, you just need to give me a second to refuel here,
Yeah, and so it rolled right down to me, and it couldn't have worked out any better in that regard. But he peeked over the ridge, and the sheep had actually just stood back up, and it was right at the top of the ridge facing him inside of 50 yards. And so it worked out perfect. All he could see was the head. And so he stood up a little taller and neck shot him, and just one shot. And that was it. But awesome. Got two. So 2 sheep in 4 days. It was pretty amazing.
That's super cool that you can fly in there, go do your thing. You fly in home, that's just super cool. Be able to just, that you can, that to me is one of the coolest things I've heard on Wilderness Attitude. That is Wilderness Attitude right there. That's utilizing what you got at your fingertips, going out, making a go of it, getting after it. I think that's just sweet. And the way you pursued through it, you didn't want to, but when you have that when you have that wilderness attitude and you have that desire, and it's amazing how your body will follow your mind, and you can do it. Thank God Nick gave you that look, like no, we're going, right? It's the same thing here elk hunting. When we see, if it's the last day, it's all on, man. It don't matter how far away. You can't overcall, you can't overwalk, you can't overchase, you can't, you gotta you gotta do everything in your power to make something happen. And that's what you guys did as a team out there, and that's pretty sick, man.
It's always good to have 2 people that are pushing themselves. So usually right when one guy's out of energy, the other guy's, amped up, let's do this, keep going. And and all the stupid shit that he's like, that's why I told my wife I was going to be safe this trip, because I'm not going to climb this kind of stuff. You're supposed to tell me not to do this. And then, then he's climbing something crazy.
Each other. We just feed each other, push each other, right?
Exactly.
That's exactly it, man. Nothing changes. Now, what caliber rifle do you use to hunt up there for Dall Sheep? What were you carrying?
So I carry a 300 mag, and just a Winchester mag, long action, and it's way overkill for a sheep. And so I have a 308 as well. And so right before I went out again this year, and I look at the ballistics, and I'm always comparing, like, the 308's really accurate, but if it's sighted at 200, I have to aim like 12 inches high at 300, and then it just, it starts to drop off. And so the 300 mag I have, it's like a 7-inch correction at 300 and like a 14 or 16-inch correction at 400. And so it's just so flat shooting. It's hard to carry anything else. I've been looking at, I think it's a 6.5 Creedmoor or something similar. Been looking at that. And I might get, kind of a custom rifle. I've never owned a custom rifle, kind of looking at a few, but I carry a Tikka T3 light. It's really, really light, 300 mag, and I have a loophole scope. I think it's a VX3, and it's a 10 power. And looking at all the different scopes, you can go to a 50 millimeter objective or some of these, but all that stuff adds weight, adjustable objective, all this stuff. So I just went with
balance.
The lightest scope I could, and everything's about weight when you're sheep hunting. So that's actually something.
Now you mentioned bow hunting earlier in your story, and so obviously you bow hunt. Do you like one or the other better?
So I've always been into archery. I went out on a moose hunt with my dad with my bow years ago. I was still in high school. The archery only season up here, they have a season that's it's a 7-day hunt, and it's early season, so it's before the rifle season. I think they should make it a late season, because it's too warm up here, and so the moose aren't really moving around. It can still be 70 degrees early August. So The moose, yeah, they're bedded down. They're hard to find. So we weren't successful. And you can use your bow during the rifle season. There's archery and then there's open season. But so I've never shot anything with my bow other than grouse and stuff like that. But
now, are you a compound shooter or a trad bow, longbow?
I do a little bit of everything. For hunting, I have a compound. I shoot a Bowtech, and my dad's kind of more the traditional guy. Like he has a compound, but it's probably as old as I am. He shoots recurves and makes his own Flemish strings, and I have a buddy that makes his own cedar arrows, and so those two got together. And I can shoot traditional, and I go to some trad nights, and we'll go and shoot targets and stuff. But for hunting, at least for my first animal, I'm sticking with the compound.
That's cool. Right on. Now, in Alaska, it's my understanding that you have to, if in the Alaska or in the bow hunting only season, you have to actually have bow hunter's education.
Correct. So we have the hunter education card with which most people are familiar with. That's become a requirement in most game units in Alaska, especially close to Anchorage here. There used to be like a grandfathered in group. If you were born before 1986, you didn't have to have it. Most areas they're saying you have to have it now anyways.
Right.
The archery one, it's an additional class you go to, and they're having you shooting. You're shooting targets at random ranges. You can bring a rangefinder with you, but for that class, they have you shooting inclines and declines, which a lot of people are just they shoot horizontal at a range or at their backyard or whatever. Their first time shooting from a tree stand, they don't understand. You have to compensate a little bit, especially if it's outside of 20 yards. So just having that competence and confidence when you go into the field is good. They teach you some blood tracking stuff, and that's actually part of the test too. You walk around and they have like a drop of blood here and there, and just checking your attention to detail, that kind of thing. And I actually have a tag that I drew this year that's on Elmendorf. It's a military base that we have real close to Anchorage here, and they try to manage their moose population on base by issuing these drawing permits. It's the normal draw season, before December you enter, and they're extended seasons. So I put in for it because normally I get back from guiding and flying all season. It's the end of September. Everything is closed. I don't get a chance to moose hunt on my own. So this particular hunt that I have, it started September 5th, and it's open through November 15th. So I had to go take an additional test that they required where, I haven't taken the bow hunter's ed class for, I think it was like 7 years ago when I took it. And so a lot of people could be the same or more. Then they go to hunt. They might have shot their bow. Like, you should shoot your bow the day before you go out hunting. But yeah, but so I went and I did this proficiency shoot, as they call it, and you just go. They have 5 targets, life-size moose targets, varying ranges from about 12 yards to 27, and big life-size moose targets. And so I threw my first arrow down range, perfect kill shot. Go out and I'm pulling my arrow out. I'm looking. There's arrow holes in the face, in the knees of the thing. There's arrows in the woods, like. Yeah, so I'm glad that they do this, because just kind of you're hunting in close proximity to Anchorage, so you can't afford to have a wounded moose running into someone's neighborhood,
or a rogue arrow being all Robin Hooded, God knows where.
Yeah, exactly. So it filters out.
You're telling me you gotta get to go on this Army Air Force base, and it's like almost like hunting private property, but
exactly.
And that's super cool that they'd even let you on an Army or Air Force base to do something like that. I mean, around here, man, that shit's high fenced. You get in trouble if you stand at the fence and look in there. They come over and want to know what the hell you're doing.
Yeah, so there's kind of 2 sections of the base. There's so it's J Bear, Joint Base, Elmendorf, and Richardson. Elmendorf is the kind of the more Air Force side. Richardson is Army, and I think the Marines. I forget which section they have their camp at, but. So it's a really big property. I think it's like it's 150 square miles or something. And so that's not all like buildings and roads and stuff, but there's a bunch of area kind of up against the Chugach Mountains that it technically is theirs. And so a lot of that I get to hunt. But they have certain like training areas, and so they give us this really detailed map. And so I have to get online or get on my smartphone and log into each training area that I'm going to be in. You can log into 2 at once. So if I'm going to get off the road here and hike in, but I'm probably going to be on the line between 2, I log into both. And then as soon as you hit a moose, you have to report it, give them GPS coordinates. And so it's pretty regulated, but at the same time, you do have a lot of freedom on the base, and there's a lot of good hunting areas, moose that never really get any attention out there. So
I mean, not that you would need to camp there, but can you camp there?
You can't, and that's one of the issues that so I'm getting ready. Maybe tomorrow even I might get a chance to get out there in the field, but there's your shooting hours are actually so like duck hunting, there's a certain, it's like 15 minutes before it's like in twilight or whatever, we have this sheet that gives us shooting hours. You can't shoot before this hour, you can't shoot after this hour, and it's down to the minute. And so we use those same tables for this hunt, and so that's your limits for shooting. But most moose you shoot right before sunset when they're moving around, it's cold out. So that was one of my questions, and they said we'd like you out by this time, but we understand it takes like 3 hours to dress a moose out. So do your best, call us if you have issues, but you can also as long as you get it opened up, do your due diligence, get it to where it's going to cool, protect the meat, you can leave it and then come back the next day. But that brings up another issue. So if you leave it, even while you're there, this can come up, but there's a lot of bears out there. On the Richardson side, they allow you to carry a sidearm, but you have to register it. There's some restrictions there, but I'm not going in the woods without my gun. So I'll have my 44 with me, but there's no bear season there. So if a bear is on the kill, I can do my best to get rid of it, clap. If I fire a shot, that's going to be, a big deal on base, unless the bear's like charging me or I really have a protect a life and property situation. So if I'm there dressing the moose and a bear comes up, I can scare it away or defend myself. But if the moose the bear, sorry, I keep twisting the two. If the bear is on the moose kill, there's not a whole lot I can do other than yelling at it and clapping. So you kind of just sit there and so you're
just gonna yell at it and clap at it until it come eat you instead of the moose, right?
There's not a lot you can do, and a lot of people carry bear spray, which it's better than throwing rocks at them, but most bears, if they're startled by you, you could have shot them with a squirt gun. They're going to run away. But bear spray, we've actually had several issues here in Anchorage this year where someone used bear spray. Like someone was getting mauled or someone had a bear really close to them. So their partner, takes out their bear spray and they spray it at the bear. But a lot of people don't think, okay, there's a breeze. When I spray the bear spray, if you've ever sprayed pepper spray or been around it, it's going to hurt you more than the bear does. It's going to come your way. You're going to get it on you. And then you can't see, and there's a brown bear that's pissed off. But
exactly.
So, a bear is a very powerful animal that even a couple shots with a 44, if a bear's defending its cubs, it's in that fight response, not the flight, but the fight response. A gun's not necessarily going to stop it. So if you spray pepper spray at it, it just makes them mad. And so a couple instances this year where, someone got mauled, someone else sprayed him with pepper spray. The bear actually turned and then mauled the person that had the bear spray. So I always just call it, it's pepper seasoning. I like pepper on my steak, so bears, like little seasoning on their humans too. But so I don't carry it personally, so it's strictly my 44. But
it's
just
so now is it one of those things where if you went to your moose and there was a bear on it, would you just hang out and hope that it's full and then leaves?
I kind of have my own hazing techniques where I could probably get it to move, but one thing that we use down, again, this would be frowned upon on base, but instead of bear mace or pepper spray down on the beach where we take people bear viewing all the time, it's kind of common practice to carry marine flares. And so we have these tubular flares. You pull the string and it launches. And for whatever reason, it's loud, it's really bright, and it's just like, it's kind of this intense. If a bear's never seen it, it runs off more so than just firing a gunshot. And so that's good, I couldn't use that on base, but that the flares work really well for us. We carry those instead of the pepper spray. But if I come up, I clap, I yell at it, nothing happens, I might be tempted to go get some bear spray and spray it at it. And then if the bear comes for me, now I'm defending myself.
Yeah, now you can unload. Right.
Yeah. So
See,
there might be some loopholes there.
around here, it almost seems like you got to be in their mouth before you can defend yourself. It's not a question of whether you thought you were protecting yourself, because a lot of people, the minute a bear looks at them, they think that they have to, that they're getting attacked. But so it's a fine line sometimes based on certain places when you can make that shot at a bear and when you can't. That's for sure.
Yeah, and our fishing game is pretty understanding about it. As long as we weren't harassing the bear, we weren't walking right between a sow with cubs, we weren't
Right.
trying to move a bear, that would have been fine there. But like if you're camping and a bear is making charges at your camp, they already destroyed your tent, it's putting you in a dangerous situation, and then it's posturing in a way that it's close and you don't like it. If you shoot it in self-defense, we call them a DPLP bear, defense of life and property, or DLP bear. But you then have to skin the bear, and you take the skull and the hide with the claws, just like you were bear hunting. Those are the items that you're required to take. Early season, you have to keep the meat. Late season, you don't. But you then take those items, and you're required to take them out of the field and turn them into fishing game, so it becomes property of the state. So there's they'll ask you a few questions about the situation, but I haven't heard of anyone getting punished for defending themselves and shooting a bear in a situation like that.
That's good. So have you ever been attacked by a bear?
No, I've had to give them my fish before. I've been fishing a good fishing river. The bears know about it too, and so I've had them approach me. They get about 50 yards away, and people talk about a false charge, like a bear will charge you, but it's always a false charge. They'll stop. Okay, now it's 10 yards away, and then it's just standing there. Now what do I do? So depending on its kind of attitude and movements, I have different comfort zones for how close they are. But this one got a little close, and so I took my fish and I was walking away, and I actually I gutted them. So I whipped my fillet knife out as I'm walking away. Slit the belly, and I grabbed the guts, and I threw them on the ground, thinking, okay, this is going to stop the bear. Sow had 2 cubs with her. The cubs start eating the guts, and the sow just kind of smelled them, looks back at me, and keeps walking towards me. I'm like, God. Like, she knows there's something better, and she can still smell the fish. And so then I left one fish, keep walking, and she just kind of like smelled it. I think she took a bite out of it and then kept walking towards me. I'm like, fine, give him my other fish. And so the limit was 3. I had 2. I was going for my 1 more, and I had to give them away. So it's better that, just kind of let them do their thing. They're fishing, and I'll catch more fish.
Yeah, and you get to walk away, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's a win-win deal, in my opinion.
Yeah, would be cool to have, cool scars, but I don't want to get that close.
But I still have my fish.
Yeah.
I got these bite marks in the back of my neck.
Right.
But so we have a few standard questions on wilderness attitude that we close the show out with, and one of them that this is kind of my gig, is where is your favorite place in the wilderness?
Let's see. What time of year is it? What airplane do I get to use?
No. You gotta narrow it down. You gotta pick your spot. Where is your favorite place in the wilderness, where you are, where it all comes together for you, or where it doesn't come together, or maybe a good example is, where do you want your ashes spread? Where do you want to live the rest of your life? In whatever, what I mean? Where is it?
So traveling all around in the summertime, you get warm weather and all that stuff. But just during hunting season, when it starts to get cold, you start getting a little frost in the morning, a little fog that kind of lingers around, and you're out in the woods. You're living with the equipment you brought with you, and that just brings it all together for me. So hunting season for sure, and I'd probably say up on the Selawik River, which is a refuge up north of Galena. That's where we do a lot of our guiding, and there's a lot of trees right next to the river, and so you have open tundra on both sides, then these 2 little corridors of trees, one on each shore, and then you have the river. And so camped on the river, there's grayling in the river, you can hear moose calling off in the distance, and you kind of have that real crisp morning air. super quiet, except for you might hear a wolf howl here and there. You're up within 40 miles of the Arctic Circle. It's just not many people have been there. Is a big thing too. You'll never see any sign of people except for maybe a piece of firewood that was still there from last year when I was there. So
Right.
it's just this really untouched, pristine area with it's just complete wilderness. Northern lights out in the evening, and yeah, it's
Wow.
just the whole package.
That's amazing. So the wilderness has given a lot to you in your life from the time you were a little boy and whatnot. Who took you? Who took you into the wilderness? Was it your dad, your mom,
My dad, yeah, my
your
dad for
dad?
sure.
Yeah.
My mom grew up with her brothers hunting and stuff, and she's still really into it. But yeah, my dad kind of lit that fire. I'd go out on hunting trips with him, and then my first like big game hunt, I was 10 years old, and I got my first caribou when I was 12. And so it just, yeah, I'd wait all year, and we'd start talking about hunting season or start talking about going to the shooting range before hunting
Right.
season. I just get all excited, and yeah, that was what I looked forward to all year.
Nice. And so from the time you were a young boy with your dad and up till now, the wilderness has given you a lot in your life, and I'm sure it'll give you a lot more. But what's the number one thing that you do to give back to the wilderness that's been given to you?
Um, so I mentioned the cell. Like anytime I'm up there, I never see any sign of people, and so that's one of the things that it's always hard for me is like I'll fly out somewhere and you'll see wrappers laying on the ground or gun shells. Someone went out and shot shotguns here, and so just whenever I'm out, I'm always really conscientious, and I try and if something gets trash, if it shouldn't be there, if it doesn't have any use to someone that's going to be there after me, I try and remove it. Try and clean up
Right.
areas. I try to get other people to do the same thing, but also just being careful with your surroundings. Like we have wildfires up here, and people have a campfire on an area of tundra, and there's root structures underneath the tundra. And we had an instance where a sheep hunter had a little campfire, and a fire just kind of erupted about 2 or 3 miles away. Somehow it smoldered underneath, and they just had a random fire, and we didn't have any lightning or
Wow.
anything. So that's what they determined it where it started. But yeah, just leave no trace camping, looking out for the environment, and sharing it with people. I really like introducing people to it. That some people live in Alaska, live in other areas that they have wilderness, but they haven't really explored into it themselves, and so
Right.
they might be intimidated by it. They might just never really had the interest. But when you kind of just give them that little head start, just show them, it doesn't have to be intimidating. Just open it up to them. Then it opens the world up. I mean, off the road here in Alaska is probably 90% of the state. So
Right.
just get into the wilderness is a big thing.
Yeah, getting people to disconnect and getting people to go out and explore the world. I mean, it's a huge place, right? I mean, Alaska's huge, but just realizing that you have a primitive part of you that belongs out in the wilderness in the nature, it's calling you. You got to go out there. It doesn't matter what you're doing. It doesn't matter if you're camping or hiking or what. It doesn't matter, right? I think that's the key is getting people to disconnect from the cities, disconnect from the norm, and go out and explore a little bit. I think it's super important.
Hmm.
And your services obviously offer that opportunity. And I think that that's the amazing part is that you are sharing it. Yeah, it comes at a cost to get in that use an air taxi service, but the reward and what you're going to see and what you're going to explore and what you're going to retain is priceless in my opinion. So I think the value is there if you take the time to see that and go and explore Alaska through an air taxi service, that's for sure. I mean, you're in the wilderness every day. So if we took the wilderness away from you, what would that do to your attitude?
It's making a bad attitude. um, that is one thing that wilderness brings is it's kind of a release. It's an escape. So no matter what's bugging you in town, financial issues or your girlfriend's mad at you or whatever, that's my escape. You get out and you'll just spend some time by yourself. Bring my dog along. It's just getting out and letting everything else go. So yeah, if the weather's, I don't know what I'd do. So like if I couldn't fly, my dad and I always talk like, well, if I couldn't fly, I'd probably get into sailing. And so I have a big interest in the water, big interest in getting out out in the ocean. So I don't know if that is included in the wilderness section that you're taking away, but
no, I think the wilderness is everywhere in the world that's outside of an urban jungle,
mm-hmm.
is it not? I mean,
Yeah.
when you were a kid, shoot, just walking the irrigation ditch to the end of the fence line or some of that. I mean, that was the wilderness. I mean, that was like you were a long ways away from your comfort zone at that point. So I think anywhere, whether it's in the bottom of the ocean, on top of it, up a river, top of them, it don't matter. It's all
Yeah.
wilderness.
You drop me off in the middle of a city with a credit card, and I'm probably going to survive, but I'm going to be really uncomfortable, like trying to figure out, okay, hotel, like where do I go? Like, what alleys not to walk down. And it's going to be weird. You drop me off with a knife and, a way to start a fire in the wilderness, and I'm comfortable. I know what to expect. I know how to read animal body language, and the wilderness is everything.
Yeah, wilderness is everything to me too. It's amazing what it does for me, and that's what we're trying to share through Wilderness Attitude. So I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down with us, and I look forward to meeting you and shaking your hand, and I surely can't wait to be sitting in the passenger seat of one of your planes. And by the way, you can open the windows and you can put the plane at 40 degrees. Yeah, I'll be okay with it all. So I'll look forward to getting that first ride and every ride after that at some point. So
yeah, well, appreciate you having me, and looking forward to it. We'll save a seat for you.
Well, I love the idea that you have an extra seat from time to time. Mike was telling me that you called him a couple weeks ago and said, "Hey, I got an empty seat, want to go?" And it's like, man, I'd love to be on your speed dial if I was up there, because I'd be like, "I'm out,
right?
I'm out of here, I'm going," But
yep.
So I mean, you're in a cool spot at this point. You don't have a significant other, so it's my understanding that you use your plane to pick up chicks. Is that true?
Yeah, business is good. It's certainly different in Alaska than in the lower 48, because most of the time, if you invite a girl that's from Alaska, like, hey, do you want to let's go flying, let's go fly over here, go to dinner, let's go camping. They usually say, what kind of airplane do you have? That's their first question. And
no kidding.
You kind of list like. Well, yeah, I can kind of list like, okay, this is, at work I can take the Super Cub or the 206. If you want to go all out, we can take the Beaver. Like, what do you mean? What kind of airplane do I have? Like, we're going flying. Well, my dad has a 185. Yeah, and they just my dad has a 185. Right? I've flown in the Super Cub, and so then it kind of takes away from it. Just like, all right, well, fine. But yeah, people from out of town or people that haven't really been introduced to airplanes, then it really gets you the extra mile there. But it is pretty neat being able to let's go fly around, fly over this glacier, land on a river down below it, have lunch, and then fly back to town. It beats going to the movies for sure. Right.
Yeah, that's for sure. I think it would be awesome. So I don't think I have any more questions for you. I think that's just I can't believe that they would actually try to one up you with Daddy's airplane. That just kind of that almost made me speechless.
Well, it's kind of nice having the company airplanes there, because then Daddy has a 206. Well, I have a Beaver. They're about $350,000 each, and they're like, oh. And then they want to go.
Well, that's pretty cool. Well, having that at your disposal is pretty good, but. So I thought of a question. What's in the future for Ben? I mean, you're a young man. What are you gonna do here? You got any challenges coming your way? Any new dreams?
Well, I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up. So.
Boy.
So you have these building blocks to get to where you want to be flying. You can you go Air Force, you flight instructor, whatever. So. So for some people, this kind of flying is a building block working towards an airline job, where I have enough hours now to do to hop into the airlines. But I don't know. I'm pretty happy where I'm at. Yeah, I'm happy where I'm at. And just kind of exploring different things to get into. I'd like to kind of get into more adventure guiding, where I have a group of like photographers, or like maybe just one person, maybe up to like 4 or 5 that just kind of design a trip around what they want to do. Where instead of just dropping them off, I'm keeping the airplane with us and kind of giving them a narrated, fully guided trip around the state or one particular area of the state. Just be able to share a lot of the things that I've learned. I think that'd be pretty cool. So see what we can do with that.
Right on. Well, that sounds good. Well, you got any shout outs to anybody?
Well, there's probably a few people logging on there, but yeah, it was fun being on the show. Fun talking to you, and looking forward to meeting you up here, taking you flying.
Sounds good. Where can people find you, Ben? Where can people follow you and look you up and come fly with you?
Well, I got Instagram and Facebook. Try and watch that stuff fairly frequently. But based out of Lakehead, Sportsman's Air Service. We get a website. It's alaskasport.com, and that gets you to the company page. A lot of pictures on there, and just kind of watch for changes. We usually put different updates on there, and Sportsman's has its own Instagram and Facebook as well. So try to stay current with all that.
And they can find you on Instagram at Ben Knapp, spelled with KNAPP_AK for Alaska. Sounds good, man. Thanks so much for coming on, man. I look forward to seeing you. All right. We'll talk at you here soon. Thank you.
All right, cool. See you.
All right. Bye. Thanks for tuning into the podcast. I sure hope you're enjoying them. These series on Alaska have been great. I appreciate every one of you as a listener. I hope you guys are enjoying what we're doing. I don't get a lot of feedback, so I need you listeners to go out there. I need you to blow me up here a little bit. I need you to blow up my email. I need you to blow up reviews, iTunes, Podbean, our website, whatever. Get a hold of me and tell me if we're 2 thumbs up or if we suck, because we're going to continue to do these segments of areas and places and people and different things in the wilderness and the outdoors, and we want to know what you're thinking. We want to know what you want. This podcast is for you, the listener. It's for you to enjoy when you have the time, and it's for us to empower you, give you information, give you, adventures and stories, these men and women who live in the spirit of the wilderness, no matter what they're doing. So hit me, would you? Hit me with your best shot. I want to know what's going on out there. This is Brandon Waddell, your host of Wilderness Attitude. Thanks for tuning in.